Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense, a podcast where we discuss professional wrestling and how little sense it makes. So we're gonna start talking about stuff. Recently in the WWE, they have decided to try and shake things up, presumably because viewership on their TV shows has been a bit down, and there might be a little bit of competition with All Elite Wrestling. So they made like a little creative shakeup where they added Paul Heyman as like the head of creative to Raw, or the lead writer or something along those lines.
I think the official title is Executive Director.
Executive Director of Raw, and Eric Bischoff is the Executive Director of SmackDown. And this is really interesting for a number of reasons. Because a lot of people these days probably don't really remember because it's a different fan base, a different time, different generation. They don't remember the two different companies ran by Paul Heyman and by Eric Bischoff that were direct competition for the WWE. So it's a big deal. I mean, obviously it's not that much of a big deal anymore because both men work pretty closely with that company. But it's still, to me, it's still kind of weird,
Yeah, totally. Considering, like, if you went back 20 years ago and said, okay, in 20 years' time, it's going to be Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff running Raw and SmackDown respectively, you'd be like, what? How has this happened?
Right, and then you'd say, also, Triple H runs a different company called NXT, and it fucking rocks. You'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Shut up. None of that makes any sense. But yet here we are. This is the world we live in, and I think it's really cool. I personally think it's a really good idea because, we've talked about this a lot this year. It feels, I don't know what it is about this year, but it feels really notable more so than any other year. Just how kind of weak some of the storylines are and how it's a bit of a drag to watch, which is weird because a lot of the time the pay-per-views have been fine.
Yeah.
Like, there's, some of them have been a bit, like, WrestleMania was a bit just okay, and it was really long, but, like, it wasn't terrible. They're not putting on a bad show.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why the pay-per-views don't kind of drag as much as the Raw and SmackDown is probably because they don't have to deal with all the stuff that they do with TV shows, like their ad breaks and trying to work stuff around those.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing they've just introduced recently with the no match is allowed to continue during the ad break, so they're coming up with all these lame ass reasons for kind of stopping matches after 2 minutes and then picking them up after they come back from the break and stuff. It's all really lame.
I love how suddenly in like the last 2 weeks we have had so many 2 out of 3 falls matches. It's ridiculous. Like, you've never seen this many 2 out of, and just suddenly it's like, yep, this one's a 2 out of 3 falls match. And you're like, oh, again? All right, cool, sweet. Like, it's just happened. Is that just on Raw though, or is that on SmackDown as well?
I believe SmackDown as well, yeah.
Ah, dang it, So yeah, that's the thing. They have a habit of like making their TV shows painful to watch. Like, they just keep adding stuff, like the wild card rule. Like, why you understand why they're doing it, really, but
yeah,
they do it in such a lame ass way that you're like, why would I care about this?
Exactly, and when it comes across as if they don't care about it as well. Like, the first time they introduced the wildcard rule, they said however many superstars it is that can go from Raw to SmackDown in one night, like 4 or 5, whatever it was. They basically said that, and then on that very first show, there was more than that who kind of came across and were involved. So it's like, well, straight away, you've kind of gone against your own rules and shown this whole thing doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And this whole thing came about like literally 2 weeks after the draft as well, which itself dragged on for 3 weeks for some reason. So it just comes across as shambolic and a bit of a situation where they're just throwing shit at the wall because they know ratings are going down and they are desperate for any kind of idea to drum up fan support and interest, and so there's no sort of major plan going forward. It's almost like they're flying by the seat of their pants, kind of trying to figure stuff out as they're going along.
Yeah, which is not a good way to run a business.
No, but this is why it could be a good thing having, Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman in charge of the creative side of things, because they will try and hopefully, book for the future and not just come up with different ideas for this week's Raw and then next week's Raw do something completely contradictory or whatever. Hopefully this means we'll get a more focused product, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because these two guys both have experience of running a TV show and weekly wrestling content, and it makes sense to put them as in charge, as it were, because they know what they're doing. It just because both of those guys kind of ran companies that went out of business doesn't really factor into it, because they were still good at what they did. And in Eric Bischoff's case, it wasn't really, that wasn't the issue anyway. You know what I mean? Like he didn't drive the company into the ground. Although we give it a damn good shot. But those two guys both have really good experience at working on a TV show and handling that kind of creative stuff and knowing how to run a show properly, timing everything now and the segments and all of that stuff that a lot of people don't really think about, camera angles and whatnot. Those two guys know that stuff. So on that basis, it's a really good idea. From a practical standpoint, those two guys make total sense because they can run a smooth show, and that's what you want. If they're also running creative, that's even better, because they're both two guys that have a very good mind for the business. And I read something earlier about how you can see the two different styles in Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, because Eric Bischoff always tried to have a big ground in reality. A lot of his stuff had, it was very real and edgy and cool. Whereas Paul Heyman had a more grandiose kind of vision for the wrestling, and how it's supposed to be really like they always say, like a carnival. You get the best of everything, and he had big spots and big ideas and stuff like that. So if it ends up turning out like that, we could end up seeing Raw, with these big spectacles, like the thing with Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman, kind of big spectacle stuff like that. And then on SmackDown, maybe make it a little bit more real and more wrestling based and more kind of, grittier storylines and stuff like that. And if that's the kind of split they're going for, that's perfect. That's that's so good, because then you really do have two. Then there are two different brands, which is what they want. You have this crazy, explosive, in your face kind of, we're Raw, bam, 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 wow, and then you've got this grittier kind of more serious SmackDown. That would be great, especially if one's on Monday and one's on Tuesday. If they're the same show and one's 3 hours and one's 5 hours, that's 2 hours or whatever. That's 5 hours of wrestling in a row, 2 nights. That's hard to watch. But if they're two totally different shows, then that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember as well, the move to Fox is happening in early October. I think October 4th. Mm-hmm. So SmackDown will move to Friday nights then. Okay. And by all accounts, Fox want the WWE to sort of present SmackDown as more of a legit sport, kind of, because I think it's part of their sports network or whatever. So They want it to, be treated like it's a proper competition and not so heavy on the kind of goofy side of pro wrestling that we see quite a bit. So that could be pretty interesting because, like you say, Eric Bischoff could be a good guy to spearhead that kind of change in the style of SmackDown. Mm-hmm. And he's also got like good experience when it comes to dealing with networks and stuff.
Right.
Having done that with WCW and even like TNA as well. And I think he's helped produce like loads of random reality TV shows for like VH1 and stuff as well. So he is like a good intermediary between like WWE and Fox to kind of bash out what they actually want from this massive like 5-year $1 billion deal that they've set up. So
right,
yeah.
When you think of it like that, Eric Bischoff is the perfect guy for SmackDown. Like it's tailor made for him. His whole experience has led up to him being able to negotiate really well with Fox and see what they can get away with.
Yeah.
And if we do end up getting a grittier SmackDown, I'm all for that. So, technically, on paper, this seems great. No, I think the only main problem with this entire scenario is a problem we have talked about many times before, one that you're very vocal about. The problem being, these two guys could come up with the greatest fucking ideas in the world, and this, arguably they have done, but it all has to go through Vince McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
And God bless him, he's, he works very hard, he does his best, he has definitely put on some of the best wrestling before. It just seems like maybe he's getting a little bit too old for things, and maybe it would be good to kind of not necessarily pass the reins if he doesn't want to do that, but certainly like let those two guys make a couple of calls by themselves.
Yeah,
because they've earned it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
With what they've contributed to the wrestling business, those guys definitely know what they're doing. But also because it would add a little kind of fresh angle to things, and also because Vince McMahon, I feel, could do with having some of the pressure taken off him. Like he's an old dude. There's no other way to say it. He's getting on in years, and he still works a crazy schedule and still does the same kind of routine that he used to do. God knows he could definitely use a break somehow. And if all that means is just him giving a little bit more responsibility to Heyman and Bischoff so that he doesn't have to run 100% of creative, then even that's a win. Give us little slivers, give us little bits, and then gradually, if it works, which I think it will, he'll ease up a bit.
Yeah, and you kind of think the fact that he's making these changes as well makes it seem like that he realizes there is sort of a problem with just him being in charge and like everyone having to go along with his vision of Raw and SmackDown. Like it seems like this is a move. I don't want to say done out of panic, but a bit of concern at least for the future, and like with all the sort of negative reaction on social media that you get, and podcasts like this where we've spent a lot of time talking about how frustrating and just disheartening it is to watch WWE for the most part these days. And he must look at the ratings as well and see that it's just lost like 1 million viewers in 2 years or whatever, and think, wow, we need to do something to stop the rot. So this is like a good first step, but at the same time you could say, is it a step forward or is it a step backwards? Because Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman both have a shit ton of experience and have obviously had a huge influence over the wrestling business over the years. But like, when was the last time either of them were running a successful brand? I mean, you like look at Heyman, and that was, well, the last time he was running anything was the ECW revival, which was back in 2006, and then Eric Bischoff was sort of with TNA as well for like 3 or 4 years, like from 2010 onwards. And obviously he didn't, his whatever he was doing there wasn't a huge success, because TNA is, you know, from the early 2010s onwards, it just kind of lost a lot of viewers and a lot of good faith and a lot of talent as well. So yeah, it's a weird one where you think, well, yeah, they've got this experience, they've got this, they got the credentials, but like, are they a bit too sort of out of touch, and will they be able to, you know, revolutionize or revitalize WWE the way that Vince is hoping?
I think maybe, yeah. I think that Paul Heyman has still stayed enough, you know, still active in the wrestling business. Like, he probably does a lot more behind the scenes than we're aware of. So I think that him kind of having this new position just gives him a little bit more freedom and a little bit more power. But really, it's, you know, probably not a whole lot different from what he was doing. You know, there'll be a little bit more responsibilities probably, but I still think that he's been around the business recently enough to be able to, you know, backstage certainly, to be able to run a show by himself. Easy enough. And interesting, you were talking about the TNA thing with Eric Bischoff. I mean, it is true. The show did take a turn after Bischoff and Hogan got there. And you know, the tone, they were trying stuff, and it didn't always work, and that was a shame, because it felt like before that they were actually, you know, making progress. Because I remember watching TNA around that time, and I did stop after Hogan and Bischoff came in, because it did change, and
yeah,
so that is definitely a factor. But then, you know, like you said, it could be the flip side, the coin flip of Vince McMahon still being in power. Is that, you know, Bischoff isn't right 100% of the time, but neither is Vince McMahon. So, like, you would imagine the two of them would be able to find middle ground for a lot of their stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And so, with both of them kind of hashing stuff out, I think that the show would still be better, because, you know, Bischoff would be able to bring ideas to Vince that he wouldn't be able to think of, but at the same time, Vince would be able to shut down any, like, anything too outlandish from Bischoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that actually could work pretty well. And so I'm not too worried about this. I think that, you know, that we should keep an eye on the TV shows for the next couple of weeks, because I think something's going to happen. You know? I think I hope, at least. I hope that it'll improve a little bit, you know. Hopefully it'll improve a lot, really.
Yeah.
But we shall see. I'm hoping this, because I'm going to go to SummerSlam this year.
Oh, really?
I don't know if I told you.
No.
This is a podcast exclusive, so we can do a show afterwards where I talk about SummerSlam. And I've never been to a big, like, pay-per-view show before. I was at a house show a couple of months ago in Dublin, which was really good. So I'm really excited to see SummerSlam. So hopefully by the time we get to SummerSlam, you know, that's just, you know, under a month away. That'll give us plenty of, like, you know, TV time to see if these two guys are making a difference.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping it is going to improve. And I'm also hoping that The Miz gets injured right around SummerSlam time.
Nah, he'll be main eventing.
He fucking probably will be main eventing, and I'll be like, what the hell? Why did this have to happen? We're going for the Iconics, really. That's why we're going. I'm pretty sure we're going to see Iconics versus Kairi Sane. The Kabuki Warriors, Kairi Sane and Asuka. Funnily enough, they actually were at Dublin That's why I went to the house show at Dublin, and it was the Iconics versus the Kabuki Warriors. I was very happy about that because I actually got to see them. So that was sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, they were really good. The elbow drop Kari Sane does, it really is amazing. It's super cool.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So there you go.
I'm super jealous.
I'm broke as shit.
Yeah.
It's because my brother lives in Toronto, so he got us tickets. And I'm like, that's awesome, but I can't really afford it. But if there's any like rich billionaires listening to this show, please hit me up.
Yeah.
Or sponsor us or something. That'd be nice. So yeah, I'm really hoping that there will be some kind of like positive, creative kind of resolution. Is that what I'm thinking of? Improvement, kind of a visible improvement with the shows. You know, and I think Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff are two guys who can do that. You know.
So do you think? Do you think it's kind of weird that, say, like Triple H and Stephanie McMahon have been looked over, or for these sort of roles, when you would have thought they would have been sort of next in line, being that they're essentially Vince's kids at this point? Is it a bit weird that they aren't the ones who've been given this opportunity, and because they probably have more of a fresh look on things than Bischoff and Heyman? Or
well, I don't think it's weird for Triple H because, like we said, he is still in charge of NXT, and he's probably, I think at the moment, he's pretty content to just kind of work on that. Because ultimately, let's be honest here, Triple H is getting that gig, right?
Yeah, for sure.
In time, give it time, he's going to be running Raw and SmackDown himself. So, like, right now, I think he's content just rocking NXT because he's getting that gold sooner or later. I think Stephanie, probably kind of similar in that, you know, she's going to be able to have a position like that in the future if she wants it, I feel like. But the difference is, and this is something we don't really know, but like, you know, what is Stephanie contributed to like booking and running a show and stuff like that? Like, what does she do backstage? We know what Triple H does, and you know, we can pretty much figure out what Heyman and Bischoff are doing, like the production and the ideas and stuff like that. But like, and we know that they've done that stuff in the past. We know they have experience with that, but I don't think anybody really knows what Stephanie's contribution to the company is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I
read not long ago that she's been pretty much absent from TV a lot recently because she's in at home and, like, you know, raising the kids basically.
Right. But like before that, you know, what was she like helping to run the show, or was she being a producer, or was she coming up? You know, was she being a writer? Like, I don't know how much experience she would have running that. Like, it's not enough to just say you're the son of Vince McMahon or the daughter of Vince McMahon. This is, you know, the same thing runs with Shane. Like, is he doing anything behind the scenes, or is he just an on-air personality?
Yeah.
You know, like, I wouldn't be surprised if either Shane or Stephanie had worked on the booking committee or worked backstage as a producer or something like that. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they hadn't done that, because they don't need to. You know?
Yeah.
They're on TV a lot for the most part, and they're fucking rich anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But you know, nobody really knows what. It's weird how we all kind of know that Triple H works, like, you know, he's involved with that kind of stuff. But nobody really knows if the actual, you know, children of Vince McMahon are involved in creative and production and stuff like that. We have no idea. You would assume so, but like, we don't know what they've done. We don't know.
Yeah.
No weird.
It's bizarre considering, you know, it wasn't, that long ago when everyone assumed it would be like Stephanie and Shane like legit fighting behind the scenes to take over from Vince as well. And now it seems like neither one of them are really going to be in charge when Vince does pass it off, it'll be Triple H instead. So, yeah, it's kind of weird that they've both taken a backseat, I guess.
Triple H is probably pretty happy about it.
Yeah,
he's having a great time, you know. And then, like, once he is in charge, he can fire Vince McMahon. Oh, not Vince McMahon. He can fire. Well, he could fire Vince McMahon. He's in charge. Triple H is in charge. That's what he wants. But he could fire like Heyman and Bischoff, and then bring in, you know, Road Dogg, or whoever the fuck else. Shawn Michaels, though, to be fair, I mean, he's good at everything else. You know, he could easily fucking run the booking. I don't know if he'd want to.
Probably not.
No, probably not. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, Triple H he's happy enough where he is, I think. Must be good being Triple H, having that whole company. Like, you can see it, you know. He's like, someday this will all be mine. lucky pup. Can you imagine what it would be like if Triple H was in charge? Like, would it be better? Do you think it would be like NXT, or would he realize that, like, being on a national television like station handcuffs you way more than just being on a streaming site? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say because, like I think we've talked about before, NXT is such a different beast from Raw and SmackDown because of the fact it's only an hour long, and because they, you know, tape so many episodes in advance that they kind of have to lock in the storylines and stuff they want to do, and there's not a lot of room for kind of booking on the fly. So in that regard, you know, that's really benefited NXT. But is that something that would transfer across to Raw, SmackDown? I don't know, because, you know, Raw being 3 hours, that's a lot of time to fill each week. And like you say, there's different considerations and stuff with like concerns over the like quarter-hour ratings and like just what sort of content they can put out without like offending the network or whatever. And yeah, so it's all these different considerations to take on board. It's going to be one of those things where I don't think they could quite capture the feel of NXT on Raw, on SmackDown, not in the same way, but like they could still take lessons from it, and you just switch things up so it puts like more onus back on the wrestling and dials back on the you know, the more goofy aspects of WWE, like all the segments and in-ring talking bollocks, and you know, just make it more like it, you know, almost like it used to be, you know.
That's all we want. We want to. We see that's the thing. Like some people think that wrestling should be, you know, the way it used to be, and some people are like, no, but it needs to evolve and it needs to different. Like, because sometimes I feel like wrestling now, like if you look at some of the guys on the independents and stuff like that, like they're like the mindset is it's gimmicked. Everybody knows it's gimmicked. The audience knows it's gimmicked. So why don't we just put on a fun to watch match instead of something that's like realistic? So like the entire kind of mindset has shifted to like pure entertainment, as opposed to like how it used to be, where it was just like pure wrestling.
Yeah.
You know? It used to, like, you know, back in the day, it really was just, like, the whole point was that they were wrestlers and they wanted to fight. So they did. Or, you know, they got in an argument, so they would fight about it. That's fine. But, like, now, everything is just, like, way too kind of flashy and spinny and stuff. I know I probably sound like a Jim Cornette, like, old man. Like, look at these old guys doing their flips and things. Back in my day, I didn't do a goddamn flip. You know, I get it, and I don't want to sound like an old guy, but like they're like, but I've seen independent wrestling that I don't like just simply because it is just like too over the top, and it pulled you out of the match for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know some people are like they just watch it because it's, you know, guys being athletic and showing off and having fun and doing a good job. But some people like me, you know, we get kind of taken out of it whenever it's a bit too flashy and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You know,
Yeah.
Stuff like what we talked about ages ago with Seth Rollins when he did the superplex into a Falcon Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, that's your finish. That's not a fucking mid-match move. You know what I mean? But like, there are guys on the independents that do fucking crazier stuff like that in the middle of a match, and you're like, well, you know, it just makes all the moves look like they don't mean anything.
Yeah.
And if they don't mean anything, what are you doing them for? You know, that's my opinion. But I know other people who are like, because it looks good, and the whole point of the show is to be entertained, and you know, some of it is entertaining. So you know, it's a real coin flip there.
I think this is the harder thing for WWE as well, because of the fact that this style that we see on TV now has sort of evolved over the last 15, 20 years or so since the Attitude Era. So since like the height of WWE's popularity into it turning into this like corporate juggernaut, like they've kind of become set in their ways. And when you have like a cycle or a pattern which brings about success, you don't really want to stray too far away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like when you look at, say, AEW, who are just starting out and have the chance to kind of experiment a bit more and, you know, try different things and different ways of approaching like the same old tropes that we see week in and week out on Raw and SmackDown, but from a different angle. So from their perspective, they've got a chance to kind of reinvent the wheel, whereas with WWE, it's so much harder to kind of stop altogether what they've been doing for so long and just go in a completely different direction, you know?
Yeah, because you know it's already established that it works somewhat. You know, it's still making them money. It's making them a lot of money. You know, they're probably making more money now. There's certainly more money now than they were in the Attitude Era, which is when they were arguably the most popular.
Yeah, but the business has changed itself, because it's not even about like pay-per-view buy rates and house shows and stuff like that anymore. It's all about the TV deals.
Yes.
And it kind of, this is the thing that worries me a bit as well, is that they've just got this 5-year, $1 billion deal with Fox for SmackDown. I don't think they're ever going to get a TV deal to compare to that ever again. Mm-hmm. With the way that ratings are going down and like the general just like bad feeling about the product at the moment, it's just you kind of wonder like if Fox haven't been tempted at some point over the last year since it got announced that if they should like just pull out of the deal altogether, because it seems like they're paying a hell of a lot of money for something that is on the decline, and you kind of wonder, are they going to really get their money's worth from it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. But, like, I also think that ties into your last point is that at the moment, the WWE is so kind of complacent because all they have to do is put on a show. Like, they've got that deal with Fox now, so all they have to do is provide them with content. Doesn't matter what it is, they've already made the deal, you know? So
but it's so short-sighted, though, because that means, they've got their deal for 5 years, but what happens when those 5 years are up and they haven't improved at all?
Right. So that's why what I think is going to happen, which is what happened with when SmackDown went live a couple of years ago, is that like right off the gate, it started off really hot. SmackDown Live, when it started a couple of years ago, was great. It was so good. It was paced really well. The people got the right amount of time. The wrestling was fun to watch. The storylines were decent enough. It was good, and they shook things up, which is what they should have done to get people in to watch it. So I imagine they're gonna kind of go in all guns blazing with this Fox deal to try and like boost up viewership or make a big deal like that. And if they do something like that and things do increase a little bit, then they're going to be safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, give it 6 months, give it a year in, check out and see how it's doing then. Because I feel like they're definitely going to go in hot, like all guns blazing for sure. And then, just because it's the nature of the way they do things, something will kind of start falling flat. I would give it a year, but I feel like coming into them going to Fox, I think it's gonna be good. I think it's gonna improve.
I hope so.
Yeah.
As negative as we sometimes are about WWE, like we're WWE fans.
Yes.
We've spent years watching this stuff, and we don't want it to be shit. We want to sit down and enjoy shows. So, we're not rooting for WWE to fail or anything like that. We actively want to see them improve the product and make it something that we can enjoy. But this is the problem that we've had over the last few years is there's more to complain about than there is to kind of, talk, find something to praise. So, it's been a pretty tough ride as a WWE fan.
Some of it has been pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie, but also like the pro wrestling business is kind of cyclical. Like it always goes around in circles. So like already we're seeing major competition against the WWE, which is what happened in the 90s, and then but also before that. And then after that boom died, after that, wrestling, the WWE wasn't that good. You watched WWE in 1994, how good was it? You watch it in 2005 or 6 or whatever, like how good was it?
Yeah,
like questionable. So, obviously, All Elite Wrestling has some kind of like foothold in the consciousness of the majority of wrestling fans at the moment. So, whether or not it is like an actual legit competition, nobody can say at the moment because, they still don't have their TV deal and they're not kind of competing against ratings and they're just, they're still growing. We can't possibly know if they're going to be a real contender. But it does seem like it's going to change things. And again, it might not necessarily be the All Elite Wrestling thing. It might be part of SmackDown moving to Fox and trying to put on a good show, and which might burn over into Raw, and it might be the fact that Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff are now in these big creative roles. But to me, it feels like we're gonna get something good again. It's gonna come back around, and we're gonna it feels like pretty soon we're gonna get something good out of it.
Or at least some kind of shift in like the status quo, so it's not going to be just the same old shit anymore. That we might get something new, whether it's good or not, who knows, but it'll be different. So
yeah, I definitely think that we're getting something. Something's going to happen, and I'm very excited to see what it is. Hopefully, it's not going to be something happens that ends up being terrible, but it's happened before. It could easily happen again. But I'm looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to it. But like I said, you got to keep your eye on like SmackDown, and also All Elite Wrestling. I think, I think part of the early success of it is just that kind of newness of it. Like they're only running a couple of shows this year before their TV tapings and stuff like that, so it's still all quite fresh in people's minds. And people are kind of looking at it like an alternative to the WWE. So they are kind of like almost out of spite. They're kind of like putting, their attention to All Elite Wrestling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
definitely. They're like, we want it to succeed so badly, so we'll help it out. But that kind of mindset is only like short term. That's not going to get you that far.
No, you can only go so far as like the anti-WWE.
Yes, you need that. At some point, we're going to actually have to see like a well put together TV show and good storylines and good wrestling. At some point, we're going to have to actually see tangible evidence to show them as a potential, as a real potential, competition. Because at the moment they're not anything. But I do feel like even if it's nothing, the WWE are going to kind of like, they're going to pull something out soon. I think things are going to be different, and I'm looking forward to it.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Is there anything else you want to wrap about before we wrap this up?
Not really.
Pretty much covered everything, didn't we?
I think so.
Nice. I don't think there's anything else we need to wrap about with this one. And only that I'm hoping for good stuff. You guys, people in the WWE, hopefully you guys can listen to this podcast, which you probably will, and change things and make a difference. And all they're gonna do, man, is just put Daniel Bryan on everything. He's the best. I think he's the best.
Oh, definitely.
He's so good. I love him.
He's kind of being wasted a bit at the moment in the tag team scene, but at least he's getting some sort of spotlight.
But SmackDown are moving the Fox soon.
Mm-hmm.
They could use a good champion.
Well, why do you think they moved Roman Reigns over to SmackDown?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry, Kofi. It's gotta happen. Or like the fucking Undertaker or something.
Yeah.
Fucking, will you see if that happens? I'm gonna be so annoyed. But I wouldn't be surprised, man. Wouldn't be surprised. Because, wrestling doesn't make sense. I got it in there at the end. Cool. Alright. Well, yeah. We're all looking forward to seeing what Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff can bring to the table. I think it's going to be some good stuff. But we'll see in the coming weeks and months. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to the show. We'll be back next month with our SummerSlam special, I guess. I'll take some pictures and I'll put them up on the YouTube video. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.